Oh, a finish from Leacher here to the box. Hotter, will he go for goal? Goes for goal. Here it is!
Might drop here, Ziggins! Off the line by Ring! And in!
Welcome to the Bees Analytica podcast. Hello and welcome to the final episode of the Bees Analytica podcast. On this week's episode, I'm joined by the usual two, Alfie and James, and also third host, Andy, who's joined us for this last episode. On this week, we're going to be discussing a bit of the Reading-Brentford game from last night and having a debate of who is the greatest player and sports person of all time. Also, to finish it off, we're going to have a look a bit about would you rather England winning a World Cup or your club win the Champions League and discuss the international stage. Welcome, boys, and let's end this one on a high, shall we?
Yep, let's do it.
We'll start off then with, obviously, your three's opinion from a Reading point of view last night's game. We'll go to Al first. What do you make of it? Positives, negatives?
Positives. We went toe-to-toe with arguably the best side in the Championship. We gave a good account of ourselves, to be honest, and I think the performance fully justifies why we are up in the top six. I mean, the result less so, but the performance justifies it. I think 3-1 was very harsh. I think it should have been a draw or a team nicks it either way. But, you know, as soon as the second gone in, the error, it's just one of those things, isn't it?
No, I agree. I agree with you. I think you've been desperately unlucky against us this season anyway. I think it's like 8 shots on target and you've conceded 6. Not all, obviously, Raphael had a blunder in the first game and probably should have done better with Panos' effort yesterday.
That's it. If that would have cost us the 3 points, a point, you would have been absolutely gutted. But because we were losing at that time, didn't really look like scoring. It's not so bad, but still. That is a woeful statistic.
Is there anything you noticed during the game, James, that you spotted that worth bringing up?
Well, I just thought that it was kind of the game was such a fast pace that I felt that the 5 sub rule really benefited Brentford in this match, and that they were able to bring on like for like players that the team didn't look arguably weaker than the one that started, and they could keep pressing Reading in the second half and keep looking to create chances, whereas we just I think we sort of ran out of steam part of the way through. And then we didn't really have the quality to bring on to keep up that tempo and that quality. So it just all kind of dropped off towards the end. But the fact that we're disappointed to lose to Brentford, after the last few years of where we've kind of finished, so we've come on leaps and bounds, and I can't have too many complaints really about yesterday, other than the fact that the scoreline was harsh.
Yeah,
and I agree with you. I think it was that weird one. There was just such a drop-off in that second half from you lot. I think for 45 minutes, you were causing us all manner of issues. Like, we could barely play out. We were trying to build through the thirds, we couldn't. I think Lauren actually literally ran the show in midfield. It's just you seem to come up for that second half, and just the entire dynamic of the game changed. You seemed content sitting off and trying to protect instead of stopping us playing. And that just kind of played into our hands, I think. It allowed Silva, allowed Jensen to push further forward, get into these pockets of space where they can affect the game. Which were in the first half, De Silva barely got a touch up the pitch. He couldn't get it there. He was dropping deep. He was having to come into unfamiliar places for him. It just seemed really, really odd. Especially, I don't know if you guys have done that in recent weeks, or it's been a case of just changing style at half time. It was. I've got the pressing intensity numbers here. First half it was 7. In first quarter it was 7. Second quarter it was 10.5, and then went down to 4.8. And then second half you didn't get lower than 10 the entire game. I'll put the graphic up and maybe in the edit, but you can just see the drop off, and it's just staggering. Is it a tactical thing, personnel thing?
I think it's a lack of energy. To be frank, I don't think we could have kept that intensity up for the 90 minutes.
I just think it's a lack of options as well. I mean, we knew that we didn't. You look at our bench, and quite honestly, looking looking at the bench that we had yesterday, there's no one on there that's going to come on and change the game in a positive way. There's no one good enough on that bench who is going to come on and change the game at championship level. And I think they knew that. And once they weren't ahead at half time, when arguably they were the better team in the first half, I think that just took a little bit of the steam out of them, knowing that he didn't capitalise whilst they were on top and they didn't have any game changers to bring off the bench. That was, I think, where we lost it.
It's just
The lack of depth. I just think it's a lack of depth on the bench. That's where we lost the game, effectively. And that's where Brentford won the game. What they could bring off the bench was as good as what was on the pitch at the start.
Yeah, definitely.
It's quality of squad. I mean, you think about it, we both have pretty much the same amount of players out. I mean, we had Swift, Mate and Moore. You had Janssen and Norgard out. But the depth on your bench meant that even with those two players out, you could still bring on as good of players. Like I mean, I know Norgard would normally start ahead of Janssen, Jan out, but Jan out didn't put a foot wrong. So if he's coming off the bench, that's a like for like option. Whereas we had to take off Semedo for a Luco.
Yeah,
You
it's one of
look
them.
at it.
You know what's odd this season? Like, he's been a lot of plaudits. I think defensively he's been class, but I spoke about it with Dave from Bees Tactical. I'm not entirely sold on him, on his ball playing. I don't think he's very good as a ball player. I think defensively, no qualms. He's absolutely brilliant. He does the same role as Norgard. And I looked at his forward passing percentages. It's like only 20% of his passes go forward compared to Norgard's. It's like 40, and you can see it in a game that we just stagnate. And when someone like Semedo last night is pressing on him, on his touch, he just goes backwards and lateral and keeps the ball. That doesn't get us forward. That means we struggle in possession and we don't build. So then a Jensen has to drop back into Silva, has to drop back. And it wasn't until that second half that we made the pitch bigger, we spread you out, we switched it continually to side and side to create gaps for ourselves that allowed Jensen and Silva to get forward and go straight into them. We're trying to build through now. I don't think we're good enough, or he's not good enough yet. He's learning the system, for goodness sake. He's 22 in his first year in the Championship. Has been thrown into a deep end because Norgard's been injured for months. I don't the context is needed, but yeah, it's that you can see the parallels between him and Norgard, and they're not all positive.
Alfie, just quickly jumping in here, how do you think the game changes if Swift starts ahead of Semedo and if we have the likes of Mate to bring off the bench? If we did have that squad, those two that obviously had to drop out just before the match, do you think we'd have seen a different result?
Do you know, I think we would have. I think, it's hard to say, if we would have come out in the second half like we did the first half, we would have won the game. It's hard to say that. But I think if we had Swift and Mate in the squad or in the starting lineup, then we would have been able to continue that intensity and therefore affect the game a bit more. Because obviously Swift is one of the best ball players and he's so creative. So all the touches Semedo was getting, you would argue maybe Swift would have created a few more chances in the first half. And the same with Mate. I mean, off the bench, he would have caused havoc for Henry. I know Henry's lightning quick, but when you've got Mate's pace and build and strength, late in a game, he would have tormented and, would have done what Brentford did to us, which was push you back.
Yeah, and Tom Holmes obviously got dropped ahead of Yeardom. Do you think Holmes would have made the match any different? Can you see why Holmes was dropped ahead of Yeardom?
Do you know, I think the reason Holmes was dropped was because it was Mbuemo and Fosu. I think Holmes will come back in for Saturday against Millwall.
That pace, wasn't it? It was the pace of those wingers that made,
I think that's why Yeardom started.
To be honest, well, what impressed me was that Yeardom has been in and out of the team. He's been injured for the best part of the last 8 months. And he come into that team against a very tough team and a very good winger that he was 1v1 with. He didn't look like he'd missed a game this season. But he slotted straight back and he looked fully fit.
Yeah.
I think he had Fosu right where he wanted him in the first half, to the point where the wingers switched sides.
Yeah.
And I think that's always a compliment to the fullback when the winger getting no joy against you, so goes over to the other side of the pitch.
To be fair, I will, jump in. We have done that several times because both players are both right-footed, trying to play out on the left. They playing in that unfamiliar roles, so they do rotate pretty frequently. I don't know if it's a case of that traditional Sunday league of right, go and try and beat your man the other side, but it's been something we've done several times this season just to try and free him up.
On the point about Swift, I think we did miss him because our passing into the final third all game, really, even in the first half when we were better, passing into the final third was poor for pretty much the entire match.
Yeah, I look at it when we pressed them, and a couple of times where Semedo won the ball back high up, then couldn't pick a pass. You'd like to think if that was John Swift, we would have created an opportunity out of that.
I think that
We had a lot of set pieces.
done so well to press Brentford to win the ball back, and you don't pass it to a Reading player when you win it back.
Yeah,
that was a bit annoying.
Definitely. You were unfortunate. I think you gave a very, very good account for yourselves. Like, I see you've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter from Brentford fans saying it's probably our toughest game we've had this season. I'd say Bournemouth were probably just take it for me. Because they blew us away for 25, 30 minutes and then fell off it again. But no, I think you're proving a lot of people wrong this season.
You've just got to be proud, I think, as a Reading fan, to see where we've been the last 3 seasons. Been poor, less than poor, and just play like that against such a good team, one who may end up going up automatically, is very, very promising. If we can keep that up, we'll be in the top 6. If we can keep up performances like that.
Definitely. The gap gets wider and wider, to be fair. I didn't realise we're 17 clear. I think you're 8 clear. It's obviously all teams are going to have a wobble at some point. I think we'll slow down at some point. You can't keep not losing. Yeah. I know it's cliche, but we've gone 21, 22 now. 23 even, I think. And like at the end of the day, that's not going to last forever. We've got to be realistic here. We're going to lose 3 or 4 games at some point. It's just a case now of keep it ticking over. Win your home games, draw your away games, and just keep ticking, really, and see where the rest of this season takes us. If we get anywhere near that 106 season, you guys are not going to hear the end of it. Because little old Brentford, we've been in this league 7 years now. It's just great to see us keep moving forward.
Unfortunately, I think that game shows to me that Brentford, if they don't get automatics, then it's a failed season, because they were electric. And although that first half was probably, other than arguably the Bournemouth game, was probably the best first half we had. And we came in at 1-1. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in the Bournemouth game, we came in at 2-0, 3-0? I can't remember what it was.
3.
And I think that just goes to show
you're still a long way short of the 116. So
I think that Brentford team so far this season, in all the Reading games that I've watched, that is the best opposition we've had to play over 90 minutes. That's better than Bournemouth, better than Swansea, better than Norwich. And that is the best team we've had to play over 90 minutes this season.
Yeah.
And
And it shows how far you've come to say you're disappointed with losing 3-1, and they were not 3-1 games. I honestly admit that. They were unfortunate.
The first one we were woeful. And if it hadn't have been 3-0 in the first 20 minutes, I think you would have scored 7 or 8, but you just killed the game and kind of walked around the pitch in the second half.
Yeah, I was looking at our back 4 in that game. It was Foss who was at right back, Charlie Good was at centre back, Madsbeck was left back, and then John Thompson. No one knows. The club have said he's had injuries and he's dealing with them.
He was a great centre back, and I thought he was a great signing, but I just haven't seen it. And you think with this Janssen injury, you'd be seeing a lot more of him, but
yeah, it's one of them things. I don't know. The club are looking after him, and he came in as a 3rd, 4th choice, or probably 3rd choice. Madsbeck was 4th, and they've just not seen a lot of him. And hopefully, maybe the run-in, he comes back in, gets a few games.
Yeah.
We must be like I was going to do the numbers on it, but I haven't looked, to be honest, because it's just been so busy. But we must be the most left-sided or left-footed team there is in the Championship. Our 2 centre-backs are left-footed. Our holding midfielders left-footed.
Is Josh
De
De Silva left?
Silva is just either foot because he's incredible, but he's predominantly left-footed.
Yeah.
Like, that's at least 4 or 5 just of our starters. I think Raya is, I think he might be put down as right, but Henry obviously out on the left, so that's 5. Like, that is odd, to be fair, to have that many players left-footed. We've just seemed to be stockpiling them.
Where do you think Brentford will end up at the end of the season? Do you think it'll be playoffs, or do you think you'll go up automatically this year?
I said at the start of the season, and I said in the mid-season review, our aim this season is top 6. And you can
Oh, I
give
don't
it all
wanna
you
hear
like.
You are
Last-
first place now. Come
No,
on, surely
listen,
you've got.
listen. Top 6 was the aim, and anything
Yeah.
in the top 2 was a bonus. We've put ourselves, unlike last year, in an excellent position to get up automatically, right? Last year we never were in this position. We didn't get top 2 all season, and that's why there's
This
obviously that
season
bottle. I'll explain
This
my
season's a much better chance.
Yeah, last year we were never in. We were in touching distance the entire time, but never broke it. This time we're there. It's ours to perceivedly lose, but like Frank said, it's the next game, and it's that mentality of just keep going. You've got probably 20 or 18 cup finals now to play, and just see where the season ends. At the end of the day, if we go into the playoffs with a bump and a kick, then so be it. We've achieved the aim for the season. But that doesn't. That mentality now shifts. We've broken the seal. We've got to the position and put ourselves in an excellent position now. It's now for us to build on, and I think the players know that. Frank will know that. The club will know that. Just see, it's going to be an exciting closure to this season. But let's not get carried away. No one's ever won the league in Feb.
We have in March.
I knew there was going to be one of you to pop up.
End of March, I'll give you that, but still March.
It was end of March.
You just got in there before me.
Right, we'll move the conversation on then, boys. And something that has been doing the rounds on Twitter, other than Weetabix and baked beans, but the argument between people of who are or who is the greatest sports person of all time. Now, to prep for this, I won't lie, I have a list of about 50 different names in front of me and have managed to somehow whistle this down to a top 5. What we'll do is we'll go from each of one of us who will give their 5th place. We'll discuss each person, their merits if we agree, disagree.
Oh, thank God! I thought you wanted us to put them in the top 5 there. I was
No.
thinking.
Oh, well, I have listed mine as a top 5, but
Oh,
So what?
so we'll start off.
5, I've just got 5 names.
yeah, I just got 5.
Okay, if you can quickly list them while we're going round, but we'll start with James then. To open up, who do you, in your opinion, is the top 5th sports person of all time?
This is going to be controversial because the whole point is this guy's been put number 1. I've gone Tom Brady, mainly because I'm not particularly into NFL, but even if you're not into NFL, you know who he is. So he's got to be an icon of some sort.
Yeah.
And then I put that because I think NFL's, for me, is one of the lower sports I choose to watch. Therefore, it's lower in my list. He'd be higher in other people's, but for mine, I'd have Tom Brady. He's in my top 5, but he's 5th.
Yeah, so this is where I'll clarify what we're defining these people by. And I gave the boys the brief of it's their sporting achievement, their legacy, the before, the during, and after their career, because obviously not all of these are retired yet, especially in the case of Brady, and their well-knownness as such. People that are synonymous with their support, with the sport, sorry. So like James mentions with Brady, you say American football despite not liking it, you know who Brady is. He's just the person that people associate with that sport. And that's then that art where we'll debate it and bring it in. I'm surprised you've gone 5th for him, to be fair. I didn't expect to have American footballer on your list this early.
I do have another 5 people that are basically on the 4 that are on the periphery that I could have put in ahead of him. It was literally like a kind of last minute decision. I could have gone Roger Federer, Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, or Usain Bolt, but I went for Tom Brady. They're all kind of probably joint 5th.
I think when a man wins more Super Bowls than any other franchise, I think a singular man has done that on his own. I think he has to be in there. I think it's 7 out of 10 Super Bowls he's won. He's in a 20-year career, considering as well. You've got to bear in mind in American sport, he was a 6th or 7th round pick.
6th.
The career he's had. is
And he's
nothing
38
short.
and he's still having such an impact on the game.
43,
38.
James.
43?
43, and he's
Okay,
still
yeah,
going.
Well, that supports my argument even more then if he's that much older. And he's
Yeah,
still a key player.
I think he would have to be in anyone's top 5 for this category. I mean, it's incredible to think that at 43 he's still going at such a high level that a lot of players won't achieve at the peak of their career, and he's playing that at 43 years old, better than a lot of players in their peak. That's the incredible thing. It's
No, 100%. Well, just to give some context to the stats as well, he's got the most games won by any quarterback in NFL history. He's the most games played by any quarterback in NFL history. He's the most games with 2 touchdown passes or more in NFL history. He's the most throwing touchdowns passes in NFL history. He has the best touchdown to interception ratio in NFL history. He had the most wins away from home by any quarterback in NFL history. The most home wins by any quarterback in NFL history. I could go on and on and on. There's about
and the thing
30 of them.
that's impressive as well is that success follows him wherever he's moved from team to team and still had the same level of success no matter where he's been. That is again another sign of a world-class talent. He can move to another team, another set of players, another coach, and still it doesn't even matter, doesn't even affect him. It's the same player, same level you see everywhere. That's a sign of a very talented player.
No, definitely. I think the one thing is obviously a lot of these people don't have legacies as of yet. His is obviously his record will precede him and go behind him for the rest of his career. There's been a few questionable things about his political views and stuff he's said in the past, but then obviously like most athletes, he's buttoned up in recent years and just left it to the playing. And then obviously I think them question marks will follow him at some point in his career, but I think, and in the criteria we've given with his sporting achievement and his ability to be known, I'm inclined to agree with James here with him 5th, or at least on his list anyway, because I might have put him slightly higher up on mine. So,
I've also put him slightly higher up on mine.
I have
But
also
yeah, he
higher up on mine.
he made my list.
Out of curiosity, boys, where do you put him then?
I put him 2nd on my list.
Funny enough, so did I.
I didn't see. Look, I put him in 4th, so we don't have to cover him again. So, right, come on then, Andy. Who's 5th on your list then, mate?
Again, like James, I had some people who I could have put in the top 5 who didn't make it, but I have put down at number 5 Diego Maradona. For me, I think as his achievements and the fact that when you think about football, he's probably the first name you think about if you think about football as a world sport rather than just in England. He's talented beyond where most players have ever been and will ever be. And I mean, he's just achievements of his career: winning in Italy, won the World Cup with Argentina, paining a lot of English people with that. I think it's and for me, someone had to be in my top 5 representing football as a sport, and he is the one that I put in there for that. And I think he is. Yeah, we're never going to see anyone who is like that ever again.
See, interestingly, I seem to agree with you. I needed a footballer, but I actually put Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh, so this is the Maradona one. I can understand your reasoning, but when I'm with Alf on this, when you've got Messi and Ronaldo, who are probably the best players of all time between the two of them, I can't agree with the Maradona one. I don't think he won enough.
I think it's hard because we never saw Maradona play, but the way that Messi and Ronaldo have dominated for, well, it's getting on to 10 years now, maybe a bit further back even then, because Messi obviously won the Champions League in 2008. So you could even go a bit back further than that. I just think to be the both of them pushing each other, if I could have given a joint 5th, it would be to Messi and Ronaldo. But unfortunately for Messi, international achievements, I've gone for Ronaldo.
You know, I think the argument here is, I think just Messi, Ronaldo, both of them have done it on club stage. Obviously, Maradona won a World Cup on the big, and probably arguably the biggest stage of all when we come to that conversation later if we have time. But it's just at club level, I don't think Maradona did enough for me to personally justify putting him in the top 5 of all time.
Unfortunately
Plus,
for me as well, his personal problems.
yeah, and the legacy is tainted with the hand of God,
Yeah.
and the cocaine, which is alleged, and and the bands. I think that mars his history a bit. And yeah, other than Napoli, he didn't really. Barcelona, he got moved on pretty quickly. Obviously, he had quite a bit of success there, but nothing spectacular. And then went back to Argentina after a disappointing spell in Seville. I can see why, because I agree with the point. If you say Maradona, you think of football, and most people will, but I don't think it's quite enough in my eyes.
Yeah, I was going to put Tiger Woods in there, but I
Mhm.
picked Maradona over him. And that was the choice. I mean, because again, Tiger Woods is, when you think of the sport of golf, probably first name you would think of.
Yeah, okay.
Most-
Yeah.
He's the face of the sport. He's won countless Masters. I think it's 5.
Mm.
Don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it is 5 Masters. And that's got to be up there with the record for any individual player.
Mhm. I think, yeah, also, I agree with the fact that the comeback story as well for Tiger Woods has been really good.
So
after years of-
technically, to be knocked down like he was and have his name thrown around in the media the way it was and bounce back from that is, again, it's an inspiring story to hear that he could be hard like he was and it didn't affect his ability to come back and be as good as he was before that.
I'm going to come to Alf on this one about Ronaldo and why you've put him 5th and only 5th. Because that's considering he's probably arguably the best footballer of all time, arguably, alongside Messi. I wonder why you've put him so low.
The reason I put him 5th was because I couldn't decide between him and Messi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably why he's 5th, whereas the other names I've gone for have dominated their sport, personally. Whereas it's always been Messi and Ronaldo. It's never just been Ronaldo. And so I think that's, again, these 5 are interchangeable. I have just quickly done it in my head kind of thing.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I think that's why I would put him where I've put him, purely because it's between him and someone else at his time.
That makes sense. So I've gone slightly more left field for this, number 5 for me, and I've gone for Michael Phelps, the single best Olympian of all time. I think he's got 28 medals out of available 30, I think it was. And I couldn't not, again, in the way of, you think of swimming, it's Phelps is up there straight away. And arguably, is the most successful Olympian of all time. I was looking through some of his career records he's got here. He's got 21 Guinness World Records to his name, as it stands, which is ridiculous for any athlete to have. His record tally is ridiculous. I think it was the Beijing Olympics where he properly came onto the scene, where he won every single category he entered. With it's just superhuman. I don't think we can't have a conversation without speaking about him. And
it's similar to Usain Bolt, isn't he? And that he'll get overlooked because he's not in a team sport, but it's just as significant in an individual sport.
Mm.
And Bolt was another one that could have got on the list.
Yeah, the thing I wanted to highlight more about him is his honesty and his post-career. He's spoken quite candidly about his mental health struggles, which I admire as an athlete. It takes a lot to bring that sort of stuff up. And he's mentioned his substance abuse, his issue with weed to manage his anxiety, his depression. And he's openly spoke about his suicide attempt, or attempting to commit suicide after the 2012 Olympics. For any athlete to mention that, and considering the successes he's had in his personal career as well, it's just someone for me that I thought deserved mentioning in here. Not potentially as big as some of the other names, but I think he definitely deserved a mention just for how successful he is.
He's 3 on my list because of how successful he is.
But it's that I think James has summed it up perfectly, though. like Bolt, like obviously he does a singular sport, and how big is swimming in compared to something like a basketball, a cricket, an NFL, football. It's like, I think if we were rating him, he'd get 11 out of 10 for sport and achievement, but then well-knownness, maybe not, because I don't think many people would instantly jump out with him as their first name.
Phelps, he's the most successful Olympian of all time. That's why he's on my list.
If you follow the Olympics, that is a name that is sort of synonymous with that tournament. Because
it's like Steve Redgrave. You don't have to like rowing, but everybody knows Steve Redgrave.
Successful he's been, which is why when we come to the 4th place, that's where he was on my list.
You've got Sir Steve Redgrave at the 4th.
Not Sir Steve Redgrave, Michael Phelps.
Oh,
I was thinking that is a left field choice.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
I thought that would have trumped Michael Phelps.
I have Michael Phelps as as next on my list in 4th place.
Wow. Not as left field as Jake thought then.
No, I had Brady 4th on mine as well, to be fair. So I think we've covered Phelps and Brady. I'm surprised we've agreed on them, to be fair, boys. It's not usual.
Brady's my number 2, I think. He is number 2.
All right, Alf, we'll open it up then, because we've discussed, obviously, Phelps, Brady. Who's your number 3 on your list?
See, now this was also a toss-up, but purely because of his legacy currently and what he's done, Michael Jordan for me.
He's my number 3 as well.
Oh goodness, I feel so.
Yeah, he's also number 3 on my list.
Oh, he was on the list of 50 people. It was between him and Kobe, and I thought Jordan, purely as a player, was better than Kobe, but Kobe was a bigger name. Jordan has become more associated with the brand of basketball instead of actual basketball, whereas I think he was better than Kobe.
But if you're talking legacies, I think Jordan has a much. Unfortunately, obviously Kobe has passed, but I think Jordan has a much bigger legacy.
Yeah,
and he is synonymous. You think of basketball. If you ask about successful teams, Jordan and the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, 100% agree with you.
And the film Space Jam.
And Space Jam.
Obviously, that's part of his legacy. Do you know what I mean?
That is the greatest film of all time.
Jordan's on for me. Jordan's on there for me.
He didn't make my top 5, unfortunately. He was on that list of people that I dotted down. I just couldn't include him because there was someone that I thought deserved number 3 better, and that was Sir Lewis Hamilton. Was my number 3 on this list. The most successful F1 driver in history, the most titles or joint titles in history, most career wins, and also then when we discuss the legacy element of it, I think he's done some excellent work in the environment side of things, his development of social justice issues with Black Lives Matter protests.
The reason he's not on my list is, unfortunately, his legacy isn't complete yet. With all of these things, they are currently just his ideas. He's putting them into place, but they are just ideas at the moment.
Obviously, but I think...
And also, obviously, he's joint with Schumacher in a lot of things. And so if I couldn't put Schumacher on this list, I couldn't put Lewis.
Yeah, they're both joint 6th on mine, Hamilton and Schumacher.
Yeah, again, it was a toss-up between Hamilton and Schumacher, but I think if you asked people of older or younger than us, or a couple of years younger than us, most people will know Hamilton. I fell in love with F1 watching Schumacher, but when I was younger, but he was at the latter stage of his career, so I didn't know how good he was. Whereas Hamilton nowadays is, I think, the face of F1, where Schumacher was competing against a lot of people of the time. And I think it was just that, if you look at it purely in sporting terms and like how they've competed, Hamilton comes out on top on pretty much every category nowadays.
Even in my limited knowledge of F1, I know how successful Hamilton is and how good he is at that sport. So it's again, it's a bit like what you were saying earlier with Tom Brady, how even if you don't follow NFL, you know his name, you know what he's achieved. Hamilton is in the same category. Even if you don't follow the sport, you know what he's achieved and you've heard of him.
Yeah,
that's why
that's why I echoed Andrews, and in my list that was kind of overlooked was Tiger Woods, just in that he's synonymous with golf. I had him
Tiger Woods
and Jordan 3, but I mean Tiger Woods between 99 and 2010, he was at least number one in every single one of those years. He had a bit of a gap between 2004, September 04 and June 05.
Well, the
So
questions
like
were,
9 months, the
the
only
rumour
time.
is he allegedly retired in order to get out of a gambling ban that he was facing. He's always denied and said that was never the case and that never happened.
Yeah, well, there's always been a bit of a cloud around Tiger Woods for his personal life, but I don't think you can get away from his quality as a golf star, and that kind of adds to the kind of myth around Tiger Woods is what goes along.
Also with maintain this level of he's one of the greats of that sport and one of the sporting greats as well.
Yeah, I
In
mean, he's
terms
got
of what
tons
he's
of
achieved.
records.
I mean,
And-
every American knows the name Tiger Woods, and I think that goes to show.
But I think most Brits would know the name Tiger Woods as well.
Well, yeah.
He's one of those, like Michael Jordan is the face of basketball and Brady's the face of the NFL. He's the face of golf, Tiger Woods.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, he just wasn't in comparison to some of the others on this list. Again, him, Kobe, Jordan are all on like a list of players that I've got, or sports stars that I have on here, that I just looked at it and it's like, I can't put them above these people. Unfortunately, it's just something with Woods. It's just obviously there's question marks.
I mean, I didn't think that our list would have so much in common.
Yeah, I thought there'd be more debate here, to be honest.
We've all got. I've got Phelps, Brady, and Jordan on my list, which I would assume 3 pretty solid ones.
Yeah.
I like. Come on then. I'm interested to hear your number twos, Andy. We'll let you open up here. Who've you put down?
Well, I mentioned briefly earlier, the person I've got in second is Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, Alfie,
Same here. Tom Brady.
James.
Ronaldo.
So yeah, we've not really discussed Ronaldo over this, have we? We could bring that up in a minute.
Oh, go on.
Because who I've put as my number one. But go on, James. Let's hear your reasons for Ronaldo over a Messi or a Maradona.
Ronaldo. Well, didn't he just score 100 goals since turning 30? Or was it 200 goals? He's just hit a landmark that most players don't even get in their career, and he's just had since turning 30. So since being past his prime, he's just gone on and got tons of goals. He's won stuff at international level. He's hauled Portugal, who have arguably been worse on paper than Argentina, and he's hauled them to it wasn't a scintillating watch at the Euros in 2016, but still did it. And I just think his relentless ability to stay at the top of his game for as long as he has, and then he's moved around and he's achieved every club he's been at. He's not been a Messi that's just stayed with Barcelona. He's gone and done it in every league he's been in. So as much as he can come across as arrogant, I don't think you can argue about his talent as a GOAT.
I think
100% agree with that. Like his career achievements are
most impressive with him is that you talk about most players and you think, well, players when they get to 30, they sort of lose a little bit or they drop off. They don't score as many. Him and Messi, to be fair, are two who have they seem to be getting better and better every season they play. And Ronaldo scoring as many goals now as he was when he was 27, and he's now 36.
He's one of those players. What's timeless? That's the word to describe him.
He's just aged like a fine wine. He's just getting better. The older, the more experienced he gets. Now his pace isn't such a usable part of his game. He still has some, but it's not what it used to be when he was in his 20s. He's now learnt to adapt his game to what he does still have.
100%.
Which is amazing finishing instinct, and aerially, he's got to be one of the best players in the world aerially. I mean, there was that. Didn't he have the record for the highest jump, highest header? In how high he jumped to get it.
Yeah, it was that one where his it was like his shin was level with the player's head. It was like ridiculous.
Yeah, it was like something like 9 meters off the ground or something like that.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Mm.
Oh, see, look, I've gone
Yeah,
again. I
just
don't know if this just sums me up more.
Yeah.
I've gone more left field again. I've gone Muhammad Ali for me because
I've got him at
think.
my number 1.
Oh,
Muhammad Ali.
see, I was going to bring him up. I've got him as number 2 on this list. I think sporting achievement, unifying the belts, is just, again, incredible. He was, if the best boxer of that generation.
Him and Mike Tyson are the two you think of when you think of boxing.
I think legacy-wise, his protesting against the Vietnam War, his way, it's the adversity he faced, especially being a black man at the time in the 60s, the 70s, when he was
And being
boxing.
diagnosed with Parkinson's
hmm
and fighting it for the last 30 odd years of his life.
I also want to cover, and then the well-knownness element of it, right? In America, they did a survey of with over 12s of like who do they recognise, and 97% of Americans over the age of 12 identified Muhammad Ali as a person they recognise. Like,
Yeah,
he
no,
was
he's-
an absolute icon and probably had the best fights in history. The Rumbles in the Jungles or something else. The Frazier fights are,
Thriller in Manila.
yeah,
he
it
will,
just
he will forever be an icon of both for his sport in general, but for standing up for what you believe in. Because he wasn't afraid, and he did time and time again stand up against or in support of things that he believed in. That makes him as much of a sporting hero as his sporting achievements in the ring did. Because it goes back to the legacy thing. His legacy will not just be a sporting based one. It will be one based on him standing up like against the Vietnam War and against racial divides that there were. And yeah,
100%.
that's what is as impressive about Muhammad Ali, and why, like James, he's the number 1 on my list.
Yeah, if you go through his career achievements, I think that, or like even just post career, like the talks of him when he travelled during the Gulf War to meet Saddam Hussein to negotiate the release of American hostages, the instant of like the infamous clip of him talking down a suicidal man from up a building, like
No, it's
a
really
very
impressive.
a principled man that I think led his life as he wanted to, and came across, especially in his career, during them times where he was the minority and would be racially abused left, right, and centre, to still come through and be the biggest sports star of all time. Like,
it's remarkable, yeah. What he had to overcome, and the fact that his career then made it easier for people of color to get into sport because of things that he'd done, made sure that the next generation that were like him didn't have to have the struggle he had just to get their foot in the door, which is another good thing. There's a lot of people, not just in boxing, but in other sports, that will have people like him to thank for not being cast away.
no, I totally agree with you, Andy. And I was going to put him at number 1. I was in an R about it, but I couldn't quite fully get there in the end. I also did do my research, and I didn't realise he had a music career at one point as well. Released 2 songs, which, just it shows how far he went with his career.
Man of many talents.
Oh yeah, honestly, some of the clips of his boxing, that one where he's up against the ropes, and he's just that bloke, he just can't lay a shot on him. It's just nuts.
Yeah, no, it's
Right, so we'll cap this off then with my number 1, and see, I know I'm going to cause issue here. You've lot have all said Ronaldo or Maradona. I've got Messi as the greatest player of all time, or sports person, sorry, of all time. Why? I will hear me out. He has won 6 Ballon d'Ors on his own, right? More than any other player in history. He has the most official goals in a calendar year, where he scored 91, right? He's also, and then if you include friendlies, he's got the record where he scored 96. He's the only player in history ever to score 40 club goals in 10 consecutive seasons. All right? Him and Ronaldo are joint with the most appearances in that FIFA World 11, or whatever you want to call it. He's the only player to score and assist in 6 different club competitions in a calendar year. The man is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I get those points, Jake. To be fair, but then when you got to then compare one to like your Ronaldos or your Pelés, and then you see what Ronaldo's achieved on the international stage, which Messi hasn't, and then you got the likes of Pelé, who has kind of tarnished his reputation by kind of clinging on to any possible goal he might have scored in an under-9s tournament on a Sunday or whatever. I just think that Ronaldo just kind of trumps it. But if that's your opinion, then fair enough.
Yeah, no, I think it's just the thing with Messi is obviously him and Ronaldo are the 2 people you think of regardless if you think of football. And I just think, although, yes, I know the international stuff will come back and bite Messi probably later in his career, I think the thing with him is just his club record is just be out of this world and suppresses anything Ronaldo has done. That's the only reason. I think Messi's probably played in and been a part of and the focal point of the best teams probably in world football, like that Barcelona 2012 team.
He was probably the focal point of the best team of this generation, the Guardiola Barcelona team.
Yeah, and for me that just kind of cemented it. And I was looking at it like Ronaldo has more Instagram followers, is more of a global brand, but Messi as a player, I just think edges it for me between the 2 of them.
If we're talking about legacy, is what's happening at Barcelona going to damage that now?
Potentially, yeah. And we talk about these, but I think if we look back and he never leaves, it's one of them things that people just gloss over this period in history. He was a one-club man. There was moments for the '99 treble winning season at United, Ferguson was on the brink of being sacked, but no one speaks about that because Ferguson then went on and had a 20-year career where he won pretty much anything and everything.
And I mean, if you're looking at the situation at Barcelona, he is given more than they could ever have imagined to that club. He is the face of that club and will be even when he's not playing there.
Yeah.
And so it probably will tarnish his legacy, but I think that would be unfair considering that he's been backed into this corner. He hasn't chosen to be in this position.
That is very true.
And also, he's given so much to them, they cannot question or throw any shade in his direction, because without him, they wouldn't have won half the trophies they have.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
Well, he has been the best player at the best club in Europe, of their best ever player of the best ever club in Europe. So I guess if you look at it like that,
in terms of in our generation, he has been probably the best player over that period of time.
Yeah, I don't want to be so definitive and black and white with it, but yeah, that was the reason for me. He just edged it out.
If you had to pick one, that was very tough. But
and as also as a football podcast, I could not have Messi or Ronaldo at number 1 because I sat here with. I've got gymnasts on my list. I've got cricketers. I've got tennis players. I've got athletes like Mo Farah and Jessica Ennis. I've got rugby players and Dan Carter, Richie McCaw. But Alfie, you have gone completely different to the rest of us here.
I have, purely because of her legacy, her sustainability, the adversity she's had to face, and the role model she is to millions and millions of little black children. I have gone Serena Williams.
Yeah,
I think the highest, not highest, but if you say tennis, you think Roger Federer, Nadal, Serena Williams. If you said that about most other sports in football, you'd say Ronaldo, Messi. You wouldn't mention a female. For her to even be discussed with those names, I think is testament enough to her and what she's done to popularize the women's game of tennis. And to be honest, for me, when you think of tennis, you don't think of it as a male and a female sport anymore. You think of males and females. And I think that's her greatest legacy.
I think it's as well what she's done for the quality of women's tennis as well. Because to be the best, you have to match her level or beat her level.
Yeah.
she keeps playing at the same level, which brings everyone up to a higher and higher level because they want to get closer to overtaking her.
Mhm.
And the woman's had a
It's-
baby and is going back at the very top of her game. You know, some people just are
that's
great,
just incredible.
and she is one of those people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like when we speak about legacy and what we look back on with Serena Williams, she is the embodiment of tennis, male or female, but alongside your Roger Federers, your Nadals, your Djokovic's. And I think I totally agree with you. That is a complete testament to her. I think she's going to break the record eventually for most Grand Slams won by an individual in tennis at some point. But it's then what she's done outside of tennis as well. I think her activism, and especially we brought it up with Lewis Hamilton and the Black Lives Matter movement, which has propelled racial inequality into the spotlight. I think she has been a massive boost and benefit and changed the way people look at things. And that's the massive testament. We've all seen that cartoon from the Australia Open, which was absolutely horrific, just stupid, of the highest order. It doesn't even cover it. It was just ignorant and it was just vile. So, but then still come back, still win the Australian Open, and hold your head up high and keep going and just keep smashing down doors. Like,
And
I think I can agree with you on that one. Like, definitely.
she's also as well more than just with the sport she plays. If you think about women in sport as a whole,
Yeah,
she is probably sort of the beacon in that department, the standout, and she shows to everyone, wherever you come from, whatever you go through, that you can, if you have the ability or if you have the desire to work for it like she did,
Hmm.
then you can achieve the sort of thing she's achieved.
100%. I think her
That
success
is-
across different courts as well. Obviously, I think there was Margaret Court or something. We won't speak about her because, again, some questionable comments about the LGBT community, which again has tarnished her legacy. Who Serena Williams is trying to break her record, but she only won pretty much in the Australian Open. I think she won out of her 24 titles. How many titles was it? I can't remember off the top of my head. But Serena Williams, basically, anyway, my point was, has run across all of them pretty equally. The Australia Open, Wimbledon, and the US Open. She's all won pretty much level with each other, which is nuts. And like that 2015 like tennis year I look at here, she won 3 out of 4 available and only lost out on the semi-finals of the US Open. And she won 26 out of 27 matches that year. It's just nuts.
Yeah, she's just an incredible player, and yeah, that there may never be anyone in women's tennis at the level she's at.
Or if any tennis at all, to be fair. I think in sport in general.
It's no, she's for the adversity as well. That's probably the biggest thing that
Yeah.
is impressive about her.
she is what I would
she-
call the first woman GOAT, and I think that is testament to her.
What she
Mhm.
will have had to go through to even get into the professional circuit of tennis,
Yeah,
being female and being black as well. The time she was breaking through as well. Get from that to what she is now is testament to her, and I think she deserves the title of the first woman GOAT, which I would agree with.
Yeah, it's so tough. Like I've said, some honourable mentions that I have on my list. I've got Jimmy Anderson, Wilt Chamberlain, who's arguably the best basketball player of all time, although not as well known. Simone Biles, the gymnast for the American team. Sachin Tendulkar for cricket. Usain Bolt for sprinting. Babe Ruth for baseball. Michael Schumacher, Alain Prost, and Ayrton Senna for F1. I also got Nigel Mansell on that list. Mo Farah, Jessica Ennis, Greg Rutherford. All big British names, not arguably for the best of all time, but British names that could go on that list. Dan Carter, Richie McCaw, Johnny Wilkinson, all from rugby. That Dan Carter is probably the best number 10 of all time and doesn't get onto this list. Don Bradman, whose test average in cricket is 99 and the nearest to him is 63, doesn't make it onto this. I think the point I'm going to try and make as we wrap it up and stuff is it's near impossible. I know we've sat here and spoke definitively on a list, but you just can't. And all of these athletes are across the board are just incredible. And to get to that elite game and to be the best on the top of that elite game takes something else. It's just beyond human. Like, the mindset and the mentality to keep going and going and going at the age of 43 or post career, like playing into your 30s, your 40s, keep still winning is just something else. And I love this, to be fair, boys. It's a great way to close out. I can't thank you boys enough, especially for every Thursday giving me an hour, 3 hours sometimes of your time. It's been great chatting, and honestly, to all the support on the account, I can't say thank you enough. Like, without any of the engagements, without you sharing, liking, and putting it out there, like I wouldn't have had this opportunity to go on and take steps in my professional career. This always was a portfolio and a passion of mine, and it just happened to grow. And I can't thank all of you lot enough, and I owe a lot to the community for helping me grow. So, for one last time, boys, it's a goodbye from all of us, and hopefully at some point we'll see what happens.
Exactly.
Good luck to you.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you, and
Indeed.
I would say see you next week, but thank you.